Why do divers make the buddy check before each dive? Here is an explanation from PADI, considered the worldwide leading recreational diving agency. The buddy check is an important accident prevention procedure. Therefore, the main purpose of the buddy check is to prevent accidents. The various agencies always show us two divers fully equipped, ready to enter the water, making a cross-check of their equipment. And this is probably what most divers associate with the term buddy check. In this video, we are referring to this type of check as the buddy check, and the point of this video is to show that despite its importance, divers have problems performing it. We will also look at finding a more productive way to perform these vital checks. So if you agree that the buddy check could be better performed, then let us start with the important reason of why we do it, which is to prevent accidents.
The various diving agencies proposed various acronyms to help divers to remember the necessary steps to carry out a perfect buddy check. There is no single solution accepted by all the agencies. Some are more widespread than others, but are so complicated that divers need a reminder of the reminder, and many funny sentences have been invented too, in an attempt to try to remember the acronym itself, while others are easier to remember and pronounce, but less widespread because they are proposed by diving agencies with a small slice of the diving market, therefore not so many certified divers. And to complicate things even more, the same acronym may change depending on the diver's spoken language. The result is that many divers have problems using them, and probably out of 10 divers, only a couple of them can remember and effectively use these acronyms.
Another issue with many of these acronyms is that they do not refer specifically to what we need to remember to do in order to prevent an accident. Some help us remember our camera, while others are not so specific and include almost all we have to do, almost from when we wake up to the dive itself. And the reality is that most divers try to use these acronyms for a couple of dives after they become certified, stopping soon after due to their complexity. The first step to creating the habit of performing useful checks is to categorize them, keeping them separate and practicing them at the right time. Not all checks have the same importance. Likewise, checks equally important must simply be done at different times.
We have seen that the purpose of the buddy check is to prevent accidents. Now we add that the buddy check is a kind of last call check, a kind of now or never. Checks for fins, mask, camera, and so on are not part of a check that has the intent to prevent accidents. Nothing dangerous can happen if we forget them. Maybe we might lose a nice picture, or perhaps even a dive, but nothing related to safety. A skier who forgets his skis at home is not in danger. A skier who forgets to switch on his avalanche locator is in danger. Checking the avalanche locators before starting to ski is equal to checking that our regulator is giving us gas right before jumping into the water. It is a kind of last call check, now or never. On the other hand, other checks, for example, the dive site conditions, must be done simply at the right time, and this is why we do the briefings. Therefore, buddy checks should include only these kinds of last call checks, the now or never ones.
With this in mind, and regardless of which diving agency has certified us, BSAC promotes probably the shortest, most targeted, easy to remember, and easy to spell acronym BAR. BAR is an acronym well known by all divers, even by the majority of the divers that use PSI as a pressure indicator, and even among divers speaking different languages. BAR. Buoyancy. Make sure you can always control your depth. Air. Make sure you can breathe. Release. Make sure you don't lose anything, as well as make sure you can lose what you want and when you want. That's all. Short, simple, and targeted. Easy to remember, easy to spell, easy to understand, and even easy to be written on a diving slate if necessary. If an acronym is needed to remember these fundamental tasks, then it's okay. We can have one. But it has to be simple, usable, and targeted. Having said that, and considering that this video is not intended to teach a step-by-step procedure, a consideration is necessary. Almost all the available acronyms, the BAR too, intend to check our BCD before we make sure the gas is available in the system, and we might discuss if a better order exists.
So far, we focused on a better way to remember what to do, with a shorter, easier, and more targeted acronym. But let's be clear, checks are essential. They have helped to avoid catastrophic accidents in the past, as well as they will serve divers in the future. What we can argue now is whether buddy checks are the best way to do it. As said, the various diving agencies always show us images of divers who check their buddies' equipment. The idea is that with a double check, the possibility of errors are reduced. We share responsibility. We are somehow responsible for our partner's equipment and our buddy for ours. Very often, however, several factors limit the effectiveness of this double control. First, a very common scenario. A diver has to dive with a poorly trained, poorly skilled, or poorly experienced one, which might compromise the help that theoretically she may gain from a cross-check. 10 years is the minimum age to become a certified diver. But honestly, would you 100% trust the judgment of an unknown 10-year-old diver, perhaps just certified?
Additionally, right or wrong as it is, and regardless of the certification they got, some divers are less prone to do the buddy check before each dive. It is not so rare to be on a boat with several divers who do not perform a buddy check before diving, or maybe they just do not perform it as we expect. Even with our basic training and knowing that we should behave differently, it may not be so easy to stand up and point this out. And even if it is completely wrong, we could still end up accepting the status quo and jump into the water without having properly done the checks. Believe it or not, this happens every day somewhere around the world. Try to imagine raising your hand and saying, "But don't we need to do the checks?" It might not be so simple. If you have a partner who doesn't know how or who doesn't want to cross-check, you must have a well-thought-out and organized second option in order to make sure you are ready to enter the water, or you may have to decide not to dive at all.
Depending on the situation, we may also encounter even physical conditions which may render the buddy check more difficult or even not possible, at least not possible for a classic check, as it is always shown to us. Sometimes, with fins on or in particularly limiting spaces, we cannot easily reach our buddy. Other times, maybe due to poor organization, there is just no time to reach him or her. As well as, sometimes, after the buddy check has been done, someone from the boat crew, thinking to help us, might start to play with our tank valve, while our buddy is ready to jump into the water or maybe already in. Being able to check our own diving gear should be the basis for what is called autonomous divers in the last decision, as well as the responsibility must be ours.
A different possibility to carrying out the check of our equipment involving our buddy is to call out one of the steps of the checks, for example, buoyancy, from the letter B of the BAR acronym. Then both divers check their own buoyancy features, and finally, if all is okay, they give a mutual confirmation before moving to the next step. Of course, there is nothing wrong in asking the most experienced buddy for help and advice. We have all been beginners. But it should be a useful step towards true autonomy, and not the beginning of an addiction to delegating our tasks to someone else, for example, the navigation of our dive. Too many times we see one dominant diver leading the check, and the other one accepting passively. This is not the way to make good checks, and not the way to learn how to perform them efficiently. On the contrary, the buddy check, when understood and performed effectively, insinuates the false idea and belief that in case of problems, someone else is there to take care of it, and unfortunately, these cases are not so rare.
On the contrary, actively checking our gear, like any other thing related to us, is the best way to learn and be able to repeat the same check regardless of who our partner is. We should depend on our own judgment and not on the judgment of someone whom we may not even know, and that may be even less experienced or knowledgeable than us, or just not educated in performing the safety checks at all. Someone may say that performing these checks is our personal gear check instead of a classic cross-buddy check. Therefore, we do not become familiar with our buddy equipment, and this could be a problem in an emergency situation. But in this case, is this cross-check necessary all the time? Before each dive? In your personal experience, do you believe it is really done before each dive? Furthermore, others may say that in most extremely complex activities, checks are shared. Exactly, in complex activities, which is not the case with basic diving equipment.
Takeaways from this video. Checks are important, more important than the names we give them, and we must do them. We must understand that it is necessary to be checked before diving, and if we need an acronym to remember it, it is okay to use it. Just make sure this acronym is helping us, instead of cloaking important steps and concepts, together with the less urgent ones. Short and focused acronyms are the best. Some consideration must be given to issues during the briefing process, long before we enter in water, while other considerations, such as the now or never, must be given right away before we jump in. We should not mix them. The practice says that we have to carry out these checks together with our buddy, regardless of who he is, his experience, or his knowledge. And if our help is required for a check, we can't refuse to offer it. It is part of the game. But we must be ready for every situation, which means being able to check our own gear regardless of who our buddy is and regardless of the circumstances. Being completely in charge of our checks will help to prevent stress, and if we do not feel ready to take full responsibility for them, something should switch on in our diver's mind, and an alarm should go off and ring loudly.
Thank you for watching. If needed, find in the description the link to a downloadable summary. Remember that by clicking on the bell and by subscribing, you will be informed about new videos, while by sharing and giving a like to this video, you will help to spread greater awareness among divers.